The most important room in the world, someone has said.
These are pretty big claims for a place located just 1,300 kilometers or 800 miles from the North Pole. But then, this is no ordinary place. It's the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. Well, actually, this is just its front door. Inside the seed vault are a series of tunnels. It's not actually that cold right here, but as we go deeper, it is only going to get colder. This is Bente. You're an engineer, Bente?
Yes, I am.
You're going to show us where to go?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Next door.
How many doors are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doors until we are into the secret room.
5 doors to the secret room. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. These are the lengths of tunnel that take you down into the seed vault. This facility was built to last around 200 years and withstand earthquakes and explosions. It was placed on the side of a mountain, so even if all the ice on Earth melts, it will still be above sea level. There are 3 separate vault rooms where seeds are stored, but only one of them is in use right now, and it's buried over 120 meters from the front door. The whole point of putting the vault so deep in this mountain is to put it within permafrost. So all around me, the Earth naturally stays around -4 or -5 all year round. And that way, if something did happen and the coolant stopped flowing here, there was no power, then, well, behind these doors, it would still remain probably, -4 or -5 Celsius forever. Assuming, of course, global temperatures don't rise that much. This place is sometimes called the Doomsday Vault because even in a worst-case scenario, it should preserve the diversity of the world's food crops. Really in the mountain, surrounded by permafrost. And here's a cross tunnel that leads to 3 vault doors. Vault number 1 is up there. Vault number 2, and this is the one that's actually being used. And then vault number 3. It's pretty amazing to look up and see ice-covered ceilings and walls everywhere. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault works essentially like a bank vault. It's almost...
Yeah, because the seeds lay in boxes like this. These boxes are sealed when they come to Svalbard, and none of us can open it. We put it to the security system at the airport just to check that it isn't any explosives or anything in it. But it works like a bank box. So we can't open this. Only the depositor can open and take out their seeds.
So you don't open any of the seeds, any of the boxes that come here?
No.
Well, how do you know that people are really depositing the seeds like barley that they say they are and not other things?
Just because they have signed a contract that says it. we can't be sure, but of course we trust them.
Would there be seeds for some crops that people might consider illicit, like marijuana?
That is said that shall not be in here. No drugs and also no gene-modified materials.
No genetically modified seeds go in here?
Yeah, Norway has asked for that, not genetical material is kept in here.
Are there any particularly strange crops? Has anyone deposited anything that's really odd or weird?
No, nothing weird is in here, but we get some questions from people who want to put in their own private seeds. I also have had letters from men wanting to put their gene material in here. That is really strange, and we don't answer those.
This is the door of the vault, and behind here there are nearly 1 million different varieties of seeds from all over the world, kept at -18 degrees Celsius. You know how I can tell that it's -18 degrees in here? You can actually feel the moisture in your nose freeze, so your nostrils get all stiff. Yeah, and I see behind you we have some Canadian seeds, which is exciting for me because I am Canadian. So what sort of things do we have from Canada?
I'm really not sure because this box on the outside doesn't tell what is in it. But these numbers here are connected to a database on the internet, so you can go in there afterwards.
There you go.
Yeah,
you can go find out.
Yeah, you can find out
what has Canada got stored in the seed vault. What are we looking at right here?
Yeah.
It's like a bank vault, except everything that you've put in there is publicly available.
Yeah, it is. These are the coolest boxes, I think. They are from North Korea.
Oh my goodness.
Handmade boxes.
They look like they come from the 1960s or something. Do you think?
Yeah, they do. They have been...
They built them specially.
Yeah, they built them specially because they got the measurements of how big should the boxes be, and these are built exactly on those measurements. And here you see North Korea is placed on the same shelves as the USA, is just on the back there.
Right on the back side.
Yeah, and you have South Korea just on the back. So here they are like in small United Nations, deep in the mountains of Svalbard.
So these are the last few bare shelves in Vault 2. Once the other two vaults are full, there will be around 3 million different species of plants stored here, with over 500 seeds per sample. So one day there may be over 1 billion seeds stored inside this mountain, representing the vast majority of Earth's agricultural diversity.
And you don't know today what kind of seeds that you can grow in 20, 30, 40 years from now because of the climate change. Perhaps you have to use another type of seed 30 years from now that can handle warmer climate, drier climate, wetter climate, whatever is going to happen. So that is why it's so important to have a backup of all these seeds, so that you are sure that you can also grow the food we need for the next generations to come.
But this isn't the only seed bank on Earth. There are around 1,700 other gene banks around the world run by different countries and organizations, and at a cost of $9 million to build the Svalbard seed vault and millions more to run it, it's worth asking whether this is a costly redundancy or a valuable insurance policy. And perhaps the best people to answer this question are the Syrians, who last year were the first to make a withdrawal from the seed vault.
The gene bank in Aleppo in Syria is now out of order. It's been bombed. So 1/3 of the material that is kept in here is now taken down to Morocco and Lebanon. And this is some of the material that now has been returned, so to get the material going again.
That's why there's
that's why it's empty.
Will those seeds actually be used to grow crops?
Yeah, they will, yeah.
Over the last 13,000 years, we have cultivated millions of species of plants. The agricultural revolution underpinned the technological and population explosions that made our modern lives possible. The risk of a real doomsday scenario is incredibly remote. But whatever happens, thanks to this outpost at the top of the world, at least our seeds are safe.
The co-op, which is located in Svalbard, Butiken. Co-op is one of the big grocery stores. Well, it's a small grocery store, it's one of the biggest in town. And I'm going to show you around some of the prices, what you can expect in Svalbard. And yeah, the entrance have a motor bear right above the doors. Even though people carry rifles all around town for polar bear protection, a lot of stores and establishments actually don't allow people to carry rifles inside. So as a result, if you walk into, for example, this grocery store, there's a locker right here where you can store your guns, ammunition, and rifles. All you have to do is ask for the key, and then they can open it for you, and then you can store your rifle inside. It's not like because they have any problems with rifles with robbery or anything, but just for convenience, they can just put their rifles here inside the locker. Taco sauce, 850 kroner, and taco shells, 25.90, 39.50. And instant price is 19.50. And they have an instant MRE style food. One is the top.
We're at Falklandale right now, on the way to Everett Walk. To take the cruise ship, go to several countries. About 12 countries to reach Napo. Shama, baby! Level 2. sign. Oh no, 18. Yeah, 18. Okay, right there. Yeah, totally true.
Trước mình đi từ đây mình đi qua phải nhưng mình có đi ngược lại này có đi.
Oh, that's the one. Beautiful. Yes. Princess. All right, that's nice. Oh, right here. Cứ phải cái này em.
Mấy thằng này nè.
Okay. Very nice, very nice. We bought a ship.
Getting right on the ship. Bruce will be ready for that noon time.
All right. Con đèo Florida.
1,872 guests on board the Island Princess.
Yeah, boring.
You're all very, very welcome.
1,700.
Huh?
Well, we are just about ready to depart. We are doing some storage, as you probably can see down on the field. And we're almost complete. We should be ready to leave on time
Oh, okay.
at 6 o'clock. And we are heading out of Port Everglades then and heading up north. Going to Halifax next, 3 sea days coming up. And after Halifax we have 5 sea days over to Reykjavik and then 2 other ports in Iceland, Ísafjörður and Akureyri. Then we have a sea day down to Lervik and then another sea day to Cove, that's a port to Cork. And then Falmouth and Southampton, which will be our final port on this cruise. So it's an interesting cruise, a lot of sea days, but also some interesting things to see on the way over. It is a repositioning cruise and we're going quite far north, so you never know, we'll see what happens, but so far things are looking good. Forecast for the weather looking pretty favorable for us. There will be some wind there in the next couple of days, but it will be following wind and following sea, so it should be good. Forecast for Halifax is not too bad either. I will come back to more detailed forecast for Halifax when we get closer. All these sea days, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a noon announcement from the guys up here on the bridge, or maybe even from myself. And we'll keep in touch with everything that goes on and so forth. In the meantime, enjoy the Island Princess and everything around. Enjoy the sail away from beautiful Port Everglades. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening on board the Island Princess.
Hello. No.
He took 2 old jazz standards and he put those songs together to give us this great hit. Now, you see, you might remember back in the year that I was born, 1985. There you go, I just gave it away for you, okay? Now, she was trying to figure it out, I know. But back in 1985, a man called David Lee Roth, he brought this tune back, but let us not...
Today, Friday, May 27 at 9:18 a.m. I went to watch Diana, her own works. Princess Diana. Today is the May 28, 2022. We approaching Halifax from Florida. Today the second days of cruise ship. We start June 6, June 7, June 8, now June 8, actually third day of the cruise ship. We will land at the first port in Halifax, Canada, the day after tomorrow on 30th. Now it's 9:10 p.m. on May 28, 2022. We walk around the cruise ship. It's so beautiful. Now 9:15 p.m.
This morning in the sun, like you know that your love is love I can be sure so tell me now did I wanna serve will you still love me
They were born to wealthy parents.
I'm not sure.
Sunday, May 29 at the 6:55 p.m. The ship go to the Halifax. We will arrive there tomorrow. So now they go Massachusetts, New Hampshire. Yeah, the ship right here, this location. Massachusetts, New Hampshire. So we will rise the Halifax, Nova Scotia tomorrow. At 8, so right there at 8 a.m. and about 4:30 p.m. Today the Monday 30th, Monday May 30th at 5:20 a.m. The ship going to dock at Nova Scotia in Canada. So we arrive at 8 a.m. and or about 4:30 p.m. Halifax, Canada. Halifax, Canada. Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. Halifax, Canada.
Good morning, fix up here. Stop, face one.
Recommend đi theo have Harbour.
I might just do the 2, just because it's like straightforward.
Anybody got any
Like, we're on holiday.
Citadel. Oh.
Whether it was going to bounce off the muzzle there and where it was going to go. So you would pick definitely a rifled gun for defending the fort, and this would have been used pretty much only for signaling and not for actually readying for an attack. It's a muzzle loaded gun, so everything that you fire out of the gun has to go in at the muzzle. They're going to fire this at noon today, so if you're still around, I would recommend coming up to see it, because if you're going to hear it if you're here, so you might as well also see it, and you'll see them ramming everything to the back with the long ram rod.
So if we want to see us, come here, right? At noon. Okay.
You can watch from there or that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I would recommend that.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about the noon gun at all?
Is the story about the G8 true?
I don't know that story.
Oh, we heard the story that there was a G8 conference in Halifax and they forgot to tell the foreign security details about the noon gun, and they all
very
kind
funny.
Of dove for the...
No, I don't know if that's true, but that's a very funny story.
Well, I was probably told by a taxi driver, which means it's probably not true. It's a great story.
I'll see if I can find out. Yeah, we'll definitely hear it in all the things.
When that was the newest technology, would the range have been all the way to the water?
Yeah, it would have gone all the way to the water. But then, of course, they weren't really looking to fire on ships from up here, so yeah, just for signaling. So about 1,200 meters is the range. Yeah.
Okay, by the way, it's 11:05. They had the tour somewhere.
Yes, the tours start every hour at 5:00.
Oh, where?
In front of the information center.
Where?
Just over there.
Where is it?
So just at the front of that big building there.
Oh, big building.
Yes.
Okay.
And people will come out and they'll announce the tour. So
How long the tour?
About 45 minutes.
Oh, so after the tour we come back here to see it again.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we've got time for one more stop, which is going to be in the defensive ditch. So we'll head down.
Your smoothbore guns are only accurate at short range, not very powerful. You suffer minimal damage to enemy material.
Enough damage to slow your progress.
But not enough to stop us. We penetrate the harbor to Point Pleasant.
And sail into a curtain of cannon fire from Grand Battery, George's Island, and Fort Pleasant, as well as from any warships that have remained in port.
Only if we continue into the main harbor. We do not. We sail to the northwest island.
Will you take another pilot? Northwest Island?
Calculated losses for capturing Halifax and the naval base.
And time. Each defensive action, each confrontation consumes more valuable time.
We break through. Land our forces follow clear, and march across the sparsely populated peninsula to capture the town and the naval base.
But you citadel stands in the way.
The citadel.
Under my deep ditch, as they call the little players for play.
But those aren't little ones. How little?
Dangerous bad playing work. You will lose men and time, days, weeks. The clock is ticking against you.
Closer to the fort. Closer. Close enough for our cannon to breach the masonry walls.
Too close. We've detonated explosives at an underground tunnel running up from the ditch. Under the
We know our losses will be heavy. Nevertheless, we breached the wall.
Not before entering the ditch of death. To face murderous crossfire and snipers of the musket gallery on Americans.
Large. English guided tour starting right over here at the information center.
everyone can just gather around. It seems like there's a bunch of people coming in, so we'll just give it a minute or two before we have.
Hey, you mind if you take photos of these?
Hey.
After that, it was then handed over to Parks Canada and became the National Historic Site it is today. So you'll see a couple people walking around in the historic kit. If they're dressed like myself, or an easy thing if they're wearing a kilt, they're representing a member of the 78th Highlanders. So they were a Scottish infantry regiment that was stationed here at this very citadel from 1869 to 1871. The other group of people you will see walking around is the 3rd Brigade of Royal Artillery. So anyone wearing a dark tunic and trousers, it kind of looks like a bellhop, honestly. So they were also stationed at the citadel during the same time as the 78th, just in either year added on either end. And they were in charge of firing all the guns you see up around the walls, and also the same thing for all the other forts that are around the city and the harbor in general. You'll also see some lovely ladies in pretty dresses walking around there representing soldiers' wives, who would have also been here and throughout the citadel during the entire time the 78th were here. So with that, just a couple safety things before we get going, folks. So as we're walking around, just mind your step on the parade square. As you can imagine, it wasn't designed for visitors and it's kind of uneven. If we go into any rooms, just mind your head. If you're really any taller than me, if you're not paying attention, you might hit it off the top part of the door frame. So they're pretty low. They weren't built lower because people weren't necessarily shorter back then. They were lower because if you have a shorter door frame, it makes the structure a lot more sound and less likely to fall over, especially if you're under attack. With that, once we get up onto the walls, please stay out of the tall, long, uncut grass. It's very easy to tell the difference. It was cut this morning. On the other side of that tall grass, up on the walls, is a 40 to 60 foot drop into the defensive ditch. It is the only active weapon still here at the Citadel. No one, and it's designed to break your legs or more likely kill you if you fall at the wrong angle. So it hasn't happened on a tour. I don't want this to be the first one, so please stay out of the tall grass. And with that, when we're inside, you folks don't have to wear a mask if you don't want. I will be putting on a mask though, just so you know. And with that, once again, my name's Sergeant Lake. If you have any questions throughout this tour, feel free to yell them out. I'll be more than happy to answer them to the best of my abilities. And with that, does anyone have any questions before we get going? Alright, so if there's no questions, the first stop we're going to go on this tour is to the rifle demo. So if everyone will follow me, turn shooting back and forth at each other, that's what they were still using. So there was a very high increase in the casualties during our time period, but it's still also kind of interesting because it really was a transition period. So this is kind of your last time you see this kind of style of fighting. Just to give you a place where we are in history, we're about 50 years after the Napoleonic Wars, and we're about 50 years from World War I. So from this point going forward, they start to they're wearing bright colors, they wear camo and khaki, and also they start to let their soldiers spread out and fight more independently rather than having everyone fighting together as one unit. So with that, we'll get started. Just so everyone knows, everyone in Historic Kit will be putting in earplugs. That is because we hear these loud noises all day, every day. So that would definitely have an effect on our hearing by the end of the summer. Whereas if you folks, just for this one-time demonstration, you will be perfectly fine. However, if you do have more sensitive hearing or get scared by very loud noises, I would recommend plugging your ears. It echoes a crazy amount off the walls in here, as we can all imagine. So with that, the perfect time to plug your ears, if you would like to do so, is when Corporal Saunders brings the rifle up to his shoulder. We'll be firing off 3 rounds, so there will be 3 loud bangs. But with that, if you don't want to plug your ears and you'd like to take photos and videos, that is also the perfect time to do so. You fix your bayo. So, if you ran out of bullets, you ran out of luck, because you're able to fix your bayonet onto the end of your rifle. So it's really a long, sharp, pointy stick. that you didn't want to get stabbed with. So it was set off over to the side, as we could see, so you could both shoot when it's fixed. Previous versions of a bayonet, you really had to stick it into the pretty muzzle of the rifle, so you could only do one or the other. So this was quite advanced. And also, specifically with this bayonet, is a triangular, or it's triangular. So the sides were not sharp at all. It was purely a stabbing tool. And with that, since it was a triangle, at least back then in the Victorian era, it was virtually impossible to try and sew close a triangular wound. And it was also concave at the same time. So as you can all imagine, it goes in, when it's pulled out, sucks things out with it. It was a very effective tool. One of the favorite tactics of the 78th was pretty much everyone stands in a line, they fix their bayonet, and then they run screaming at the enemy. So if you can all imagine, big burly Scottish men dressed as Corporal Saunders is here running screaming at you, that would personally scare me away very quickly. But with that, mine's a bit different when it comes to a bayo. It's called a yataghan. It's pretty much a short sword, but they still function the same way. You can fix them on the rifle and fire them, and still be able to fire them. So with that, does anyone have any questions for Corporal Saunders before we keep on going?
Can we see one that's unshot?
No, I don't have
You're out. You're out.
He fired all the ones he had.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty much the same, just a bit cleaner looking. And they would have just had the actual like ball projectile part on if it was a live ammunition. But since they were just blanks, there was nothing on the top of them. Any other questions, folks, before we get going?
Have you ever fired a real cartridge?
No one here has fired off real cartridges from them. I can say with almost 100% confidence that they probably wouldn't fire a projectile anymore. At least if they could, I would probably be knocked over. They'd have some pretty bad recoil, but no one has fired any. Any other questions? Okay, with that, everyone can follow me this way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got smoking everywhere.
So with that, folks, we'll just talk outside here since we do have pretty large groups. We're not all crammed inside. But the next stop on our tour will be the South Powder Magazine. So the rifle that Corporal Saunders just fired, historically, emphasize historically, this is where the explosives that were used to create those bullets would have been kept, and also all of the explosives that would have been used to fire off the cannons we'll see on the wall once we get up there later. So there's a specific design to this building. It's not just tucked away in the corner here for no reason. So hypothetically, if someone were to attack the fort, it's more likely that cannonballs would shoot over top of the South Powder Magazine here, missing the building. It lands somewhere here in South Parade rather than actually hitting the building here. Compared to like if it was out in the center, it's more likely to be hit. The inside wall of the building is significantly thicker than the roof, so some really big, thick granite stones compared to a wooden shingled roof. So hopefully, if the building were to explode, if the black powder got ignited, hopefully the walls would stay in place and the roof would fly off, so pushing the explosion up rather than out and keeping everyone hopefully a bit safer. But with its maximum capacity being about 250,000 tons of black powder, even if it was a quarter of that full, it would still be a giant explosion either way, as we can all imagine. So on top of that, there are a lot of other safety measures that were put in place to keep everyone a bit safer. So you can see here, there's this outer wall with 2 doors, so these doors would be locked every night, and there also would have been a sentry on guard posted at the little black box in the middle. So if you folks came in through the front entrance, you would have seen the sentry posted out front. So apart from having the sentry posted there, which was your only entrance and exit to the fort at the time, you would have had one here, and also the brick building behind most of us that some of us will at least be able to see. Over in the northern part of the fort, there would have been another sentry posted over there. So really guarding your 3 most important things in your fort that the enemy would most likely attack first. So only entrance and exit, all your explosives, and then all of your weapons over at the other building. And with that, if you wanted to head in here and get some black powder, or you had to go about your duties in there.
Đúng mà ba đi với cái tụi không mà nó ốm ra mà không có thay.
Đúng. He scan over thôi.
Slate roof. Oops, there you are. Slate roof.
Yeah.
You're too soft. Don't worry about that.
Cooling, yeah.
Whereas the white denotes that it's a bit older, it's been sitting around for a bit longer, it's not as fresh. So if you're just making blanks for the rifles, or if you're just firing off a signal from one of the cannons, you'd want to use a barrel of the white with the white writing. And also on the barrels, we'll notice that there are H's stamped. So historically, all of the black powder for the United Kingdom and just the British Empire in general was all made in England. So, to guarantee its arrival here in Halifax, they stamped H's on the barrels, really used as a very old kind of style of postal code, and it guaranteed the black powder's arrival here in Halifax. We'll head on out now, so everyone isn't as cramped, and if anyone has any questions, we'll ask them outside. Regiment and also artillery, it's a bit more prestigious, so they get a much more sleeker, fashionable for the time period uniform. With that, before we head up onto the wall.
What is this thing?
This here? Yeah, so this here is called a sporn. So it is kind of a tradition, like kind of, what is it? It's or sporn means pouch or purse in Gaelic. So historically, kilts didn't have pockets in them, so this was really the pockets to like the pockets of the pants. However, they just had to be two separate things. So it really is like that's kind of the functionality of it. Whereas it is both ornamental, it's just kind of traditional for kilts to be worn with sporns. But another practical purpose is it helps weigh the kilt down in the front, so it doesn't really slide up in the front as much as it might in the back. Okay, everyone can follow me up. We're just going to head up this ramp. So with that, folks, we'll just briefly talk about the fort, and we'll definitely be able to see it a bit more once we wrap around the wall and head over to the signal post. There's a couple of viewing platforms so you can see the harbor a bit better. But as I mentioned in my little introduction, the Citadel was really a cornerstone when it came to defending the seas for the British and also maintaining their control of most of the world at the time. So if we're thinking of a map going from England over here to Halifax, down to the
Làm đúng timing, đúng timing á, làm để đặt sức gần á. Gần này mới hay nè.
Weight of the cannon itself, altogether the cannon and the carriage weighs about 3 tons. You can move it pretty easily if you have the right tools. Just pushing on it, it probably won't move, but if you have a hand spike, which is pretty much a big long stick, you use some leverage, it works pretty well and you can move it fast. But the 12 pounds refers to the size of the cannonball you'd be able to fire out of it. So 12-pound cannon for a 12-pound cannonball, and to fire off that 12 pounds, it would have taken about 3 pounds of black powder to fire off. Nowadays, we don't fire any projectiles, as we can all imagine. These apartment buildings would be in pieces after every single day of us firing it, also pretty bad in having the windows removed. But with that, nowadays when we fire off our signal, it's just the charge. So that is a 1 pound charge of black powder. It's still very loud, even compared, even though it's a third of what was used to fire a cannon. Historically, they would have used 2 pounds, so double the amount, double the loudness, as folks will go in a little bit. But once you get above 1 pound of black powder, car alarms start to go off. It's a bit of a mess, so we just stick with the 1 with the 1 pound. And with that, this gun is actually even outdated for our time period. So the model is an 1808 model. We're the building over there is the Army Museum, which is pretty cool. It has some nice artifacts. So getting into it pretty much once again. What they're doing now is clearing the bed and searching the gun. So this just ensures that before they fire it, there's nothing in there that could potentially become a projectile and cause a big mess, as we can all imagine, if you're not expecting to fire off something and then something comes flying out. And also, it's just to check to make sure that the gun is actually functional and will be able to work as they're loading it. Because previously, the gun has been checked for things. There has been a bunch of rocks in there. I've heard there's been a pigeon in there before. There's a lot of different things that could potentially cause the gun to mess up, or, as I've been saying, you just don't want to shoot anyone by accident. So with that, the 2 tools they used was the wad hook, which was the one that, it's pretty much a big corkscrew on a stick that you spin down the barrel. You spin it at the back a couple times to potentially collect everything, and then you spin it out, and as you do so, you pull up so it drags anything with it. And then they use the priming iron, which is pretty much a big piece of metal on a stick that has a loop in the end, and that is put through the vent, so the little hole in the back, you can see it a bit closer on the gun that's closest to us, and that just makes sure there's nothing actually there that would go potentially inhibit the igniting functions and just system of the gun. So that will be loading shortly. So the gun, we set our gun to the atomic clock in Ottawa, so it's very exact. Historically, they did fire it at 12 o'clock. They also would have fired it around 9:30, 9 o'clock in the evening time to let the soldiers know they had about a half an hour before they had to be back in their barracks, or they'd be out past curfew and get in a lot of trouble. But with that, the 12, it really functioned as a signal since most soldiers at the time were too poor to afford a watch, so it just kept everyone on time. So with that, they are now loading. So the sergeant is bringing up the actual powder charge. It's in a little silk bag, and the sergeant major is grabbing the rammer. So that's actually the tool that is used to push the charge all the way to the breech of the gun, so the end of it. But before he can do that, he has to wait, because the actual vent part needs to be covered to prevent any airflow from going through the gun. So we only fire it once a day, but historically it could have been fired more than once. So by covering the vent, it prevents any airflow from being pushed through the gun that could potentially ignite it beforehand. So what just happened was that long piece of metal, the priming iron, was put down through the vent to strike the charge that was pushed all the way to the back, and that breaks it open. And as it's pulled out, a bit of that black powder is now drawn up into the vent. And what the sergeant is doing now is putting the quill into the vent. So that's actually what is touched to ignite the cannon and the charge and everything. So historically, it was a bit different, the actual ignition system that they used, but nowadays it's pretty much a piece of masking tape with a bunch of black powder sprinkled on it, rolled up and shoved in a straw, and it like is fanned out at the top. It worked pretty well. It gets the job done, just not the same historically. So what happens is now he is holding the linstock. So it's really a big slow match. Kind of a stick with a T with a bunch of rope that was soaked in chemicals. So that is lit on fire. So you have a bit of a distance, so you don't have to get your hand right up in there and potentially have it blown off. And with that, so when the fire command comes, the linstock is turned to touch to the quill. The quill catches fire, that goes down the vent. That little bit of black powder that was drawn up into the vent then catches on fire, carrying on that chain reaction, catching the rest of the charge on fire. Big boom. Big loud noise, big cloud of smoke to look like we fired off the cannon without any actual projectile. And would have worked the exact same way if there was a projectile in there. That all that force from the big charge of black powder pushing the cannonball out with the big cloud of smoke and loud, extra loud noise. Yeah. So with that, it is about 2.5 minutes precisely until the gun goes off. So once again, everyone that is putting in, or that is in Historic Kit, will be putting in earplugs, just because we hear lots of loud noises all day, every day. So don't want to damage your hearing with that. But if you folks want to experience the real thing and not put in your earplugs, you don't, or earplugs, cover your ears, you don't have to. But if you would like to, this is significantly louder than the rifle firing was. So there will be a 30-second warning, and I will give you folks that. The command that is said is hook up, so that's 30 seconds if you would like to plug your ears, but also if you want to start filming or get ready for any photos, that is the perfect time to start too.
Question.
Yes, of course.
Are these guys military? Or?
No, so everyone in Historic Kit isn't affiliated with the military. We work for a non-for-profit that's called the Halifax Citadel Society. So really it's mainly students, but not military affiliated, just a fun, very unique summer job. The fort was never attacked, and Halifax wasn't really attacked in general. Alright, that's 30 seconds if you'd like to get ready or plug your ears. It'll just be about another minute before you folks get out of here now.
One more? One more?
The final thing they just need to do is to pretty much put the gun away in a sense. So they put the plug back in the front, the toppy on, and then they just cover the vent up once again to make sure that nothing gets in there so that we can still fire it.
Only once, right?
Yes, only one.
How this guy?
Yes.
This one?
That
Once a day?
Yeah, just that one once a day. Once a day at 12,
that's good enough.
Every day.
That's good enough.
I think it's just like in Cuba, right? In
Cuba, same thing.
There's a couple extra things that has to
In
go through,
Cuba,
and
how
also
many
all our
they
security
fire?
zones and everything, so it's a lot of like logistical issues.
Ồ, đẹp quá. Ồ, cây đẹp quá, đẹp rồi. Quá sao đẹp ha. Oh man.
Có Lily, chụp cái chỗ này cho bạn ngồi chỗ này, chụp cho bạn cắm chỗ này.
Đẹp quá.
Oh, it's so disgusting.
Thôi được rồi. Ra đi. Thôi ra chụp mà nói. Hớp đâu mà hớp. Có cái cua là đi đã, đi không là xà lát gì hết, đi con sơn. Đó, đừng quên quẹo phải đó.
parts to what we do here in the museum. And so welcome to the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21, which is the longest museum name I have ever come across. And what we're going to do together for the next 30 minutes is walk through this space looking at the stories of those that came through here. Because we're in a building that was opened up in 1928 and operational until 1971 as an immigration facility. Does anyone here have any family connections to this building? Oh, we got one. Who is that for you?
Grandparents.
Where were they coming from?
Holland, 52.
I was like, I'm so sure you're going to say Dutch.
Oh,
Yeah. And does anyone here have family that served in Europe during the Second World War? All right, so chances are they would have left from here. And so here we are. We're looking. I like starting here. I used to start by the map, but then folks oftentimes would gravitate towards this first. So let's start here. So what we're looking at is Pier 21, circa early 50s, and if we were tiny little human beings in this model, where would we be standing? Yeah. So in this building over here, and you actually have the advantage because you can actually see that it says you are here with an X on the sticker on the floor.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so this corresponds to where the men's toilets used to be. Oh. But I know it's glamorous. But the rest of this exhibition only goes this far on the model.
Oh, I see.
So this is just the area that we're going to be walking around today. But in reality, all of this was Pier 21.
Oh, good.
So what would happen? Well, a ship would pull up alongside, and a gangway would go out, and passengers would disembark. And so that's what's useful with having our cruise ship in today, is a really great visual aid. And then people would come in, and then they would sit in this room holding onto their paperwork, because we're no longer in that era of open immigration. I mean, like when my mom's family came here, late 1700s, I think the attitude then was, you actually feel that? That's something else altogether. So if everything goes to plan, landed immigrant into your paperwork, you grab your stuff and you walk across the ramp. And this ramp still exists today. Where that little truck is there, that's the entrance of the museum. So if you look up and to your right, when you're heading out, you'll see that's the ramp where customs would have been checking your hand luggage. And then the first floor of the annex building, that was like the headquarters for the volunteers, which also included volunteer translators. Worth noting, because even though the first language of the folks working here for the most part was English, maybe French, but most likely English. But that was not the first language of a lot of people coming through here. That's also where the Red Cross Nursery is set up. So for those of you who have young children, we're there, the NASCAD is here, and the rest of the museum. And of course the railway running in between the two. And then Pier 21 closed in 1971 because of airplanes. They're getting cheaper and they're a lot faster than traveling by a ship. And so what you see here, these processes, is now what folks will be experiencing when they land at airports. So before we move on, does anyone have any questions? No? All right, please let me know whenever you have questions. I will do my best not to go down like a rabbit hole because I get very enthusiastic. Ships that would have come through Halifax's harbor. It's not all of them, but it gives you an idea. But what I'm actually going to draw your attention to is the dining room table behind you. So if you were to walk into a dining room and see this table setting, what class of ticket do you think you are traveling on? First class, right? Because it's pretty. Yeah. This is what I aspire to in my own home. I just got the family silver, so I'm halfway there. But no, this is an example of what tourist class could look like. So to give you an idea of sort of the evolution of the classes on board ship, you know that scene from Titanic where they're having a time down in the hole in steerage? Okay, so steerage, before everything went sideways, steerage then evolved into third class, and third class during the 1930s got a facelift and became tourist class. Shipping companies were trying to up the numbers of folks traveling. And tourist class is what a lot of people traveled on to get here. So I'm going to backtrack a bit in time. 1928, Pier 21 opens. 1929, we have the crash on Wall Street and we enter into the Great Depression. 1930s is one of the hardest periods of time to immigrate to Canada. Basically, no one was getting in unless you were a white Britisher, a white American, or an agriculturalist with means, a farmer that has money. Then, we enter into the Second World War, and this place is taken over by the military. And it's after the war that Pier 21 gets really busy with immigration. So the boom years here were the late 40s and all through the 50s. And then it starts to tail off 60s onwards. But what that means for the dining room, at least to me, think about it. For folks coming through the 40s and the early 50s, you walk into a dining room after a 6-year conflict where it's rationing at the best of times and starvation at the worst of times. And you walk in and there's fresh white dinner rolls. It's not the national loaf that was rumored to contain synapse sweet things, which at least that's what it was in the UK. You know, there's fruit and there's vegetables. There's butter. There's sugar. There's real cream for your coffee, and it's real coffee. It's not ground up acorns. One man coming in 52 from the UK, he called it, I went from a world of austerity into a haven of abundance, and he's just talking about his experience on board the ship. I had a visitor, and he said, you know, as a kid, I got 1 orange a year at Christmas time. He was coming from Italy, and when I walked into the dining room, there were oranges everywhere at breakfast. And so I asked, could I have more than one? The guy's like, yeah, go for it. So he filled his pockets with oranges. And then every day I walk over to his cabin, pull out a suitcase and fill that with oranges as well. And that was for the entire duration of his voyage. So that was about, 7 days across the Atlantic and then a few more days for coming across the Mediterranean. And I'll just show you over here what a cabin could look like. So come with me. Montreal, Quebec City, ports eventually on the East Coast, but on the St. Lawrence River, maybe they're closed for the winter months because of the ice on the river. And it's also worth mentioning, Halifax wasn't the only entry point into Canada along the coast. Montreal, Quebec, there's also St. John, and a few other places too. And then, of course, on the west coast too, for trans-Pacific immigration. Now, the other thing I like about this photo is you can see the expressions on their faces. In particular, this man over here, I call him like the dude with the hat. Like, he's so happy, he's like obviously seen the photographer and is like, hey, I'm almost off this ship. He's like, that image with the photograph that we have behind us. These are Italian immigrants, late 1960s. Based on the fact that the little boy is wearing the shorts there, and the lady in sunglasses, different time of year. And it's really neat, because even though there's a generation of time difference between these two images, these folks are all doing the same thing. They're all waiting their turn. The first examination would have been with the medical officer. You go over, you hand over your paperwork, which included an x-ray of your lungs, and put it, the indelicate nature of the writing at times. But the thing that gets me is all the food that would have been taken away. So, everything you see in the bin would have been confiscated because of the risk of diseases and pests, etc., being introduced to Canada. So I get why it would be confiscated and later on incinerated by the Department of Agriculture. But I know why people are bringing it. Because, for me, food is home.